This is my 2015 Ram 1500. This has the 3-liter Lico diesel. It's one of the ones that they did the emissions cheating on. This has an extended emissions warranty on it as part of the settlement for that, but after it spent 5 months at the dealer waiting for parts this winter, and came back still having a massive coolant leak, I've kind of realized this thing's overcomplicated and really poorly engineered. Given all of that, I think it's time that I delete this. Not the emissions system. You guys know I'm a tree hugger that likes clean air and understands the tragedy of the commons. I'm going to delete the entire truck from my life. I bought a Tacoma. People love these things. But it's got some problems too. But at least they're problems I can fix. I think even the most hardcore Tacoma bros will admit that the biggest problem with these trucks is rust. This one's had the frame swap, so the frame's in pretty good shape, but it's starting to get a little bit of surface rust. But it's got some rust in the rockers, and fortunately it's just the inner rockers, so I don't even need to make it look that nice. I'd like to keep it from getting any worse, so I want to do an oil undercoating on here. The biggest problem with that is it makes it a lot less pleasant to do any other work on it, so I want to get everything that needs to be taken care of on this done now. First thing on the list is we're going to try to take care of this kind of floppy CV axle where it's coming out of the differential. There's a little needle bearing in there that wears out on these. East Coast Gear Supply makes a replacement bushing that should take care of the problem. So we just have to fight some rust and get this thing apart. Now, if the internet's to be believed, I shouldn't have to take the upper ball joint off. Oh my god, this is so much easier than any other vehicle I've ever done before. And if I'm lucky, this should. There's usually a snap ring that holds these in. Just have to get past that, and it should... Kind of just had to turn it a little bit as I was prying, and now it comes out. So East Coast Gear Supply sells this bushing that replaces the needle bearing that should solve the problem, but I think I'm going to go grab a new CV axle, because, well, those aren't going to play nice together. And I need a tool to get the needle bearing out. They do sell the tool to pull that thing out, but I've got a 1940s vintage machine shop in my garage, so I might as well make my own. I found a piece of scrap about the right size, and conveniently it already has the thread in it for my slide hammer. And I also found a piece of scrap aluminum to knock up a driver. So that should slip through there. And might need to get small. Might need to turn that down more so that it can stand up in there. Alright, ground down the corners a little bit. Might need more tweaking as we go. I pulled the seal off here, and it seems like the needles that should be in this needle bearing have pretty much, as the kids say, left the chat. Well, let's see if we can pull that out. I'm going to stuff this piece of plastic in there so that my little removal tool doesn't disappear into the differential. And that might have been a needle, or part of one. Now, there's a lip on the outside here. I wonder if I can just grab it by that. The backside of that race was basically laid over to the point where I couldn't hook onto it. So I kind of just chiseled on it so I could split it. Hopefully now I can get it out. I guess the three questions now are, what happened to the rest of the needle bearing? What kind of damage did it do? And do I even want to know the answer to those questions? Let's drain the oil and see what it looks like. Of course, that meant I had to take a trip to our favorite cheap tool supplier. This stuff's not for this project, but I needed it anyway. because I didn't have a set of metric hex drives. Well, the hex on that stripped out. Harbor Freight Tool's okay, though. Looking at the oil that's dripping out of that thing, I think at this point the best thing to do is to drop the diff out, pull it apart, clean it, and see what the carnage looks like. Well, that could probably stand to get painted, too. Of course, there's a bracket for the breather tube, too, that needs to come off. Well, let's get that thing on the workbench and see if I can clean it out with my tears of anguish. You can see how much metal's in that oil already. That's not good. It's just metal everywhere. Well, there are the needle bearings. I've got this thing cleaned up enough to give you the autopsy report. It's garbage. The carrier bearings don't actually look terrible. There's still some of the forbidden glitter in there that I didn't get out, but the races are definitely dull and pretty torn up. Kind of the same story on the teeth on the ring gear. I can see a little wear line in the bottom too, which is not good, and there's some pits and dings on them. Pinion's definitely got the same thing, some burrs on it. And it was feeling a little crunchy trying to rotate it, but in the process of cleaning, it went from crunchy to totally locked up. There's still a bunch of metal down in here. I mean, this thing had more glitter than a bass boat in a strip club. The spider gears, I don't really know. Maybe okay. Not really sure how much play is supposed to be in that, or if that tooth profile is anything close to what it should be. Doesn't look quite right to me, but I don't really know. The bearing surfaces are pretty torn up on them. Same thing with the one in the carrier. You can also see just how chewed up the side of the housing is here. So what are my options here? First, I'll talk about what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to put a locker in it. It'd be the time to do it, but this is going to be more of a street taco than off-road, so I don't really think it's necessary. I could rebuild this, put new bearings in it, maybe run the same gears and see how it goes, since it's not going to see a lot of four-wheel drive use. You know, mostly just on snowy days, that sort of thing. Going that route would run me a little over $400. I could send this out, get it rebuilt with new gears. That'd be close to $900, but that's not really in the budget. The other option would be to try to find a decent used one. I got on eBay and found one for $205.99. Well, that ain't the one that was on the pictures on the eBay listing, but for the price, I'm not going to complain. The oil that was in there looks pretty okay. A little bit of sludge and some real fine stuff on the magnet, but nothing I wouldn't expect. No chunks. The inventory tag that was on this said it had about 150,000 miles on it, which is about the same mileage as my truck, so it's kind of just a lateral move. That took a little modification, but I think we're in. That's what that thing's supposed to look like. And so that we don't have to go through this again, I've decided that whenever it's practical, any part that comes off this truck is going to get cleaned up, hit with some rust converter, and painted before it goes back on. Since I was thinking the mounts didn't come with this and painted mine, I'm just going to go ahead and swap them. I'm on a time crunch, so I'm not going to paint the rest of the differential. There are only 3 bolts that hold this differential in, so getting it in place isn't too bad. But getting the bracket for the breather tubes on and getting them hooked up is really hard because you can't get them on once the differential's in, and you can't really get the differential in with them on. If I had to do it again, I would probably swap out the hard lines for soft lines. I also noticed this CV axle boot is on its way out, so let's go ahead and get greasy. The boot kit comes with a new C-clip for here as well. Just a question of getting the old one off. I'm sure there's a tool for this, and I don't have it. Now we just have to get the band back together. Of course, really don't want to forget this. Well, some miles and a passenger side axle seal later, we're back, because these brakes are garbage. The rotors are really badly warped, and this caliper is dragging pretty badly. I can barely turn it. I had tried cleaning up the slide pins and lubricating them, but didn't really do much and didn't last very long, so I think I'm going to go ahead and replace the caliper. While I'm at it, I'm going to replace this hardline too, because it's starting to look a little crusty, and I'd rather not have that rust through. And there's a pretty good chance I'd break it when I was taking it off anyway. I've got some copper nickel brake line. This stuff's pretty easy to form by hand, and should give a little extra corrosion resistance compared to steel lines. Get that kind of loosely assembled for now. Of course, I don't have a metric line wrench, so breaking this loose could be problematic. It's going to strip. I do have metric vice grips, though. I'm going to wiggle it back and forth a little. Man, that is not going to want to come out. There we go, got that broken loose. I'll pull this bracket off so I can move the caliper out of the way, change the rotor, and then change the caliper. There we go. I mean, there's plenty of pad left. Should be able to just swap this line. Oh yeah, it's stuck on the hard line. But we don't care about the hard line at this point. So we'll just break it off. Got some fresh pads. Well, I'd say that sure looks nicer. Did I get that pad in? The other side got exactly the same treatment, so now all I've got to do is bleed the brakes, which can be a challenge to do by yourself. There's a ton of different ways to do it. I prefer to use an editing gag. Pump it and hold. Holding. Let off. Pump it and hold again. Holding. Let off. Push and hold. Holding. Let off. do the autopsy on these. The rotors are measuring between 27 and 28 millimeters. They might be able to be resurfaced and used again. I'll probably put them with my pile of other rotors that I'll never get around to resurfacing. The passenger side caliper was actually doing okay, but I mean, it does look like the kind of stuff that I usually pull out of the river. On the driver's side, we do have a torn boot. That's probably our culprit there. Just for fun and science, let's see if we can knock these pistons out of this thing. Well, 2 out of the 4 didn't want to move at all. That one's blown out now. But these 2 are pretty well seized. All 4 of them on the passenger side moved, though. So that was still doing something. Let's take a look at these fender braces next, since there's not a whole lot left of it. Yeah, these are gonna be fun. The replacement one has a nut welded on here, which means there's a bolt hidden under this plastic piece. So that's got to come off, and well, we know we're gonna find a lot of regret under there. That's one way to get it out. I really don't understand how this bolt is turning. There it goes. That's what I was expecting to happen. So the bed on this truck is actually made out of fiberglass reinforced plastic. You can see a little bit on there that broke out. And these braces are actually screwed into these little inserts that go through the plastic. The downside is there's not really any way to heat these up if the bolts are seized in there, so I just had to kind of grind them out. We'll glue that back on and then make some little plates to back it up. For what I hope would be obvious reasons, I'm going to make these plates out of stainless steel. The new braces went in with some fresh stainless steel hardware. Now I think I can say that ain't going anywhere. I hope. The center bearing on the drive shaft's also starting to go out, and it looks like it's from the Titanic, so I'm going to swap that out. While I'm at it, I'll swap out the U-joint too, since I have to take that apart. It's going to be important to get this back in the same position. It says Spicer there, starts with an S. There's a seam here, that starts with an S. I think I can remember that. All of the other joints on the drive shaft have to get put back together in the same position as well, so I marked them and kept track of them through the process. Well, we got the new bearing on there, put a new U-joint in. I'm usually not a fan of doing the while I'm here, but this is one that while I'm here and I have the thing taken apart, probably should do just because it will save me time in the future. Also just gave this whole thing a little rattle can job. That should do a pretty good job of making me feel like I'm doing something to keep it from corroding anymore. So that should be ready to go back in. Alright, time to do the nasty part. The first step is to clean up enough rust that I can see what I need to replace, and then make some paper templates. I didn't video a whole lot of this because there's not very much room to work down here and the light's pretty terrible. But got everything in there cleaned up as best I can. Hit it with some rust converter and then some weld through primer. Got our patch panel fit as best I can. And we're ready to start welding. Alright, got that all ground down, primed, and some seam sealer over all the welds. This side came out pretty nice. This side was a little harder to get to, so it came out a little bit rougher, but for an inner rocker panel, I think that's going to be perfectly fine. Just going to give that a little rattle can action and call that good for now. And so hopefully I don't have to do this again too soon. I'm going to blast a whole bunch of wool wax up in here. I know I said at the beginning of this video I was going to wool wax the entire bottom of the truck, and I still plan on doing that. But it turns out I have some more content I need to make. I mean, holes in the floor I need to patch up before I do that. And because I really don't see the point of having carpet in a truck, if I'm pulling the carpet out to patch the floors, I'm going to replace it with vinyl too. So I think I'm going to save all of that for another video and say thanks for watching.